The giant pandas that have been living at the Smithsonian's National Zoo in Washington for 23 years will return to China by the end of this year.
What kind of diplomatic moves were taken to bring the animals to the U.S. and how politics and new conservation strategies might impact the species' future? Voice of America's Veronica Balderas Iglesias investigates.
Now I'm going to present this pair of giant pandas to the American people.
Hsing-Hsing and Ling-Ling arrived in the United States in 1972. The rare gift from China was a sign of not only goodwill, but also soft power, after then-U.S. President Richard Nixon and First Lady Pat Nixon had paid a historic state visit to the East Asian country. In 1984, when the giant panda was declared an endangered species, Beijing began lending bears instead of gifting them. 10-year agreements with a price tag of up to $10 million were put in place.
They decided that in order to help with panda conservation in China, that they would charge for the pandas. Zoos were willing to pay these kinds of prices because, as I again said, they are a major attraction.
Under one of those research and breeding agreements, which would later be extended several times, panda pair Mei Xiang and Tian Tian began living at the Smithsonian's National Zoo in Washington in December 2000. They are not the only pandas who have made the U.S. their temporary home.
We had a pair at the Atlanta Zoo. The Memphis and San Diego pandas have already gone back to China.
The Washington-based giant pandas and their cub are now also expected to depart to China by the end of this year. There's been some speculation that economic, political, and security tensions between the U.S. and China might be at play in the non-extension of the agreements. Chinese authorities did not reply to VOA's repeated requests for comment. The success of breeding and other conservation efforts in U.S. zoos, however, should not be overlooked, some analysts say. The zoos have helped improve the species status from endangered to vulnerable. But others say it is time for a new strategy.
I think the public understands more now than it did back then that zoos are not necessarily the way that you preserve animals in the wild.
The Smithsonian's National Zoo is planning to hold several events in Washington to bid farewell to its pandas. Zoo Atlanta has also announced its 4 giant pandas will return to China in 2024. Veronica Balderas Iglesias, VOA News, Washington.